Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Mental Health Minutes. I'm here with Melissa Swank to talk about things that affect our stress levels. Hi, Melissa. Welcome.
Hey, April, how are you?
Good. I hope everybody knows you and is familiar with the integral part that you play with Keeley Life and all of our journey as Keelians. So I will spare everyone the introduction and have more time to dive in. So stress is something that comes up quite frequently, and I know plays an effect on pretty much all aspects of our body, but also of our lives. So I wanted to take an opportunity to kind of dive in with you a little bit because I know that you have some information and facts to present about it. So I know everyone has stress. Frankly, sometimes it helps me, to get things done when I feel that kind of high pressure. So kind of talk through why is that, and is that something that we should actually try to control, or how do we handle that?
Right. That's a really good question. And I've gotten asked that before. Like, is all stress bad stress? Because sometimes stress motivates you. Stress in a moment really can get you moving. We ran away from saber-toothed tigers because we felt stressed a long, long time ago, right? But so there are different types of stress. There's eustress, and the idea about that is that it's actually good stress. And then there's distress, when you think of someone being in distress, that it's less optimal or negative types of stress. And sometimes stress is good for us. Sometimes a little bit of stress with a deadline coming motivates you. It gets the adrenaline pumping. Really, when it boils down to are two things of how is that stress affecting you, in your lifestyle? Is that stress keeping you slightly motivated, or is it starting to interfere with your health and wellness, the way you typically feel, when you're feeling great? And we all know that feeling of being burdened by additional stress. So the scales really aren't the same for everybody. Everybody comes to the table with a different nadir, like a baseline level of stress, and everybody has a different level at which they reach their threshold. When you're talking about it, you also want to think about it in terms of how long you're sustaining that level of stress. So we have acute stress. That's something that's kind of short-lived. It's in the moment. You're driving and somebody swerves towards your car. Your body reacts with this stress mechanism that affects our whole body. You swerve out of the way. You come back in and your heart's racing. We've all been in that moment. What really affects us and our health negatively is chronic stress. So that mechanism, when your body reacts to stress, that's normal. We all have that, and it's good. You don't want to lose that level of stress. What you want to do is eventually come down from it. And our society, there's a lot of people who stay on that elevated level, and that can cause a lot of other issues.
Now, can you move distress to eustress? Is there a way that we can actually have that effect and purposeful?
Right. I mean, that's a very good question. A lot of the way in which you would define stress relies on your perspective of it. So if you can take that stress and reframe it in your mind. So, for example, if you had something happen and you think, okay, my first reaction is this is bad, this is very bad, but then you start to reframe it and you can say, okay, what evidence do I have that this is bad? What can I do to use this stress to motivate me? Or do I have any control over this stress? How can I let some of it go and just retain the parts that will keep me motivated and moving forward? It's not easily done. It's certainly easy to talk about,
Yeah.
and it takes practice. Um, Really, what it boils down to is in that moment, having that stimuli of feeling it and thinking, like, okay, in this moment right now, does this stress serve me? Do I need to be dealing with it? And if not, asking yourself those questions of, um, what evidence do I have that what I'm stressing about is actually going to happen? What supports that stress level? Do I have any evidence of previous experiences that it's going to turn out the way I'm stressed about it? Or do I have a lot of evidence that suggests it will not work out? For example, if you have a project due and you've got a lot of stress about it, but you always get your projects done, and you are reliable, and you know that you will get it done. You use that previous experience to help allay some of the concerns in your brain, and say, hey, brain, hold on. No need to get stressed here. Or, yes, keep me on target. Let's use that stress, but just use it to remind yourself that you're going to do it. You're going to get there.
Some folks, I think it's internal that they just have a higher stress level. So a lot of things will stress them out where it doesn't affect everyone the same. So I remember being told years back, like, hey, is this going to kill someone? Is it going to harm someone? And if you put it into a perspective like that, then it can sometimes help, like you're saying, changing that mindset. So, but some people I just notice are just naturally higher stressed individuals.
Yes, absolutely. And like I mentioned, like you need to know yourself and what your levels of stress are. Some people function better when they have a little bit more stress. Other people really need to factor in a way to take some of that stress away from them at the end of the day. And just because you can function at that very high level of stress doesn't mean you're necessarily functioning at your best when you are being overstressed and not giving yourselves those moments to decompress or self-care, which are some ways that you can help relieve some of the stress in your life.
So how do you know if you're operating at the right amount of stress, like you just said? So some folks can probably take a stressful situation and make it not stressful at all, even though they probably should put more attention to it, and vice versa. So that way of thinking, like, how do we actually know that we're behaving in a way that we should be given the actual occurrence?
Yeah. Again, really good question, because that differs from person to person. So understanding yourself is a really good way to start to develop a good barometer of how much stress works for
Hmm.
you. But we have some things about us that sometimes people don't even realize that they're stressed, and there's some physiologic things that can um, create problems for you that you may not even recognize. Like the stress may be causing heightened blood pressure, so making sure you see your doctor to understand what some of your blood levels are, your resting heart rate. Those types of things can also be good measures. So if you do know that you are in a stressful situation, and you also have some measurable indicators that suggest that you've got a high level of stress, that may be a good indicator. But it's also very individualized. So taking a moment to self-reflect and look at yourself and think, what am I feeling right now? And you can go by what you feel your best. Like usually it doesn't take a whole lot of uh, mental taxation to sit on a beach and relax. So maybe that's your nadir. Maybe this is when I feel really, really relaxed. And not always. It's not realistic to function in that capacity at all times. But taking away from that, like, okay, I know that's how I feel when I am in my happy place. For me, it's the beach. For others, it might be out fishing or hiking, or just reading a book or something that takes them down to a baseline, and then working from there. So knowing when you are so stressed out that you're starting to change your behaviors. So maybe you're snapping at people, or you're not sleeping well, or cognitively you have some brain fog, or you're not functioning at the level you typically function at. All of these can be great indicators. And sometimes those indicators can be managed on your own. And sometimes it gets to a point where you need to find some help. So reaching out to a mental health professional, taking advantage of the EAP services through Keeley companies,
Hmm.
or just finding an outlet to explore some of those stressful moments for yourself can help decompress.
And I think this is a great question too for you to answer. Speaking on stress, how does that actually affect the body, maybe externally and internally?
Yeah, yeah.
I know
Um,
we've spoken on some, but that would.
yeah. Well, one of the things I like to reiterate is that stress is a normal bodily function. It's a normal reaction.
Mhm.
Just like I mentioned some of those other, physiologic things that happen when you're getting almost into a car accident or something like that. That happens all the time. And when stress occurs in your body, it affects a ton of different things. It can affect respiration. It can make you breathe heavier and faster. It can affect your heart rate. It makes your heart pump harder. It increases your heart rate. It can affect digestion. Neurologically, the stress can impact the nerves, and you have a web of millions of nerves in your gut. If you've ever gotten a gut feeling, or like that feeling of butterflies in your stomach, that is those nerves in your stomach. You have a whole neural network. It's often referred to as your second brain. And that neural network impacts the microbes that live in your gut. So they create a home there, and the nerves that are there, basically, when they tell your brain that something's happening, it changes the chemistry in your gut, which then impacts your gut microbiome, or the gut bacteria. And something that's super interesting that most people don't know is that about 95% of your serotonin, which is the happiness chemical, your neurotransmitter in your brain, about 95% of your serotonin is made in your gut. So when you start changing the habitat for those microbes, you change their ability to produce chemicals such as serotonin, and it can affect your mood. So even something like that, where you don't, yes, and so I've talked about those things. It can affect your immunologic response. It can cause sustained inflammation. I mean, the list goes on. There's a lot that stress does, and in some respects, it's very good for you in an acute setting. But over time, it can really cause debilitating effects on your health.
So when you notice that and you actually start to experience those changes, what are things that we can do then, right? Instead of just living in that moment and letting it take over, what can we actively or proactively be doing?
Yeah. So the moment that you realize it, naming it is huge. Giving it a name, saying, wow, okay, I am stressed out. I am feeling stressed out, and just acknowledging it. That's your first step. Noticing that it's happening to you, and just taking a breath. So that exhale actually reduces your heart rate. So taking a time for a full inhale and full exhale in that moment can help dramatically. That may not be the long-term solution in terms of dealing with chronic stress over time, but it helps in those moments. And as you practice that habit, you get more and more aware of what your body is doing as a result of stress, and you get better able to handle it. So those types of things happen right away. But then also doing things proactively for yourself to address mental health. Mental health isn't just the absence of illness; it is promoting wellness in your health, in your mental capacity. So it's taking care of yourself, and whatever self-care means to you. For some, it means finding quiet time, being away, and especially right now when people are in each other's space with COVID and limited to where you can go. Maybe that means taking a walk outside, and asking, if you have kids, asking for someone to watch them. Maybe it's your partner or spouse, or maybe you take them with you, but you kind of get a little bit of free space. It can be a lot of different things. I could give you myriad different examples of that, but finding that self-care routine. And I would actually add, ancillary to self-care would be exercise. So obviously we know exercise is self-care, but it is the number one easiest way to change your mood is to exercise. So including an exercise regimen in your lifestyle, whatever works for you, is a really great way to maintain positive mood, positive affect, great mental health. If you do get to that point where you're doing all these things, you're practicing self-care, you're exercising, you're eating well, you're not overdoing it with alcohol or substances, and you're talking about it to friends, you're acknowledging it, and it's still not helping, please definitely access a mental health professional. And you can even do that along the way as well. I think in our culture, we're trying to break down that stigma, because really, mental health, I mean, your brain is part of your body. I don't know why we separated it out years ago, that it's separate, right? But it is part of it, and it runs your body.
That's everything.
Right? It runs everything in your body. So you have to address it as part of your health. It's a part of it. And so you need to proactively take care of it.
I think this has been a great discussion, Melissa. Thank you so much. I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out that you're our very own health coach too. I know it's the beginning of the year, so make sure you reach out to Melissa and find out a little bit more about what she can offer through your journey here at Keeley. So I've not done this on mental health minutes before, but let's go ahead and do the hashtag since you got me started. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Hashtag
Hashtag
Keeley
Keeley
Life.
Awesome. Until next time, stay healthy.